My name is Lena Petrova, and I am 20 years old. The story of my life is woven with threads of light and shadow, and the most enduring patterns were created not by my own hands, but by the jealousy of my sister, Chloe. For years ago, her boyfriend, a man she armed with her resentment, shattered my face in the cold, echoing silence of a university art studio. 8 surgeries have since tried to piece me back together, but every time I look in the mirror, I see the ghost of the girl I was and the faint, silvery map of the woman I was forced to become. They expected the trauma to silence me, to unravel the very fabric of my being. But what happened in the aftermath, in the quiet, painful process of reweaving my life, transformed me into someone they never saw coming, and someone I never knew I could be. This is not a story of revenge, but of reclamation. It is about the quiet strength required to set a boundary, the slow, painful grace of healing, and the discovery that sometimes the most profound act of love is learning to protect the sanctity of your own soul. I grew up in the humid, art-drenched air of Savannah, Georgia, the younger of 2 daughters. Our childhood was painted in the soft pastels of a low-country summer. I can still see the photographs, Chloe and me in identical sundresses, our hair braided with ribbons, building lopsided sandcastles on Tybee Island, the salty wind whipping our laughter out to sea. We shared a bedroom with pale blue walls and firefly decals that glowed in the dark, our whispered secrets tangling together in the space between our twin beds. I adored Chloe. She was 2 years older, a brilliant, blazing sun, and I was her happy, orbiting moon. For those first, sweet years, she seemed to enjoy my devotion, the constant, adoring presence of a little sister who believed she held the stars in her hands. The universe of our childhood fractured when I was 11, Chloe 13. The day our parents told us they were divorcing is seared into my memory not as a single, dramatic event, but as a slow, creeping chill. We were sitting on the porch swing, the air thick with the scent of jasmine, when Dad, his voice unnaturally steady, told us he and Mom would be living in separate houses. I remember dissolving into quiet, hiccuping sobs. Chloe, however, said nothing. She simply stood up, walked into the house, and went to our room. A moment later, we heard a sharp, splintering crash. A small, porcelain music box we shared, a gift from our grandmother that played a tinkling, delicate tune, lay in pieces on the floor. Chloe had swept it from our dresser. That shattered music box, its melody silenced forever, became the poignant metaphor for our sisterhood. After the divorce, Chloe changed. The sun of her warmth toward me receded, leaving a cold, sharp light in its place. She held Dad responsible for the fracture in our family, even though the truth, which I learned years later, was far more complicated. When Dad moved into a small carriage house downtown, Chloe refused to visit. I continued my weekend stays with him, which Chloe saw as a betrayal. Daddy's little artist, she would sneer when I came home, my tote bag filled with sketchbooks and charcoal pencils he'd bought me. Go on, tell him all our secrets. That's what a traitor does. My love for art, a passion that had once been a bond between us, became another point of contention. For me, the art studio was a sanctuary, a place where the chaotic lines of my life could be woven into something beautiful and coherent. I excelled, my work earning praise from my teachers. Chloe, meanwhile, drifted, her own considerable artistic talent curdling into apathy. Teachers would say, "I had your sister, Chloe. You two are so different." Each comparison, however well-intentioned, seemed to tighten a knot of resentment inside her. Our mother, lost in her own grief, only exacerbated the problem. She began to champion Chloe with a fierce, misguided loyalty, treating her struggles as a noble battle. When I brought home an award from the city's student art show, Mom would offer a distracted, "That's lovely, Lena." But when Chloe passed a class she'd been on the verge of failing, Mom would declare it a triumph, a testament to Chloe's resilience in the face of so much difficulty. As we navigated the treacherous waters of our teenage years, the chasm between us widened. Chloe's world became one of late nights, sullen moods, and a string of boyfriends with restless eyes. Mom called it finding herself and loosened the reins completely. My life, by contrast, was governed by strict curfews and endless questions. Chloe needs her freedom, Mom would explain when I questioned the double standard. You've always been so self-sufficient, Lena. Still, I tried. I would knock on her door, offering a new skein of yarn or a book on watercolor techniques I thought she'd like. Occasionally, she would soften, and for a few precious hours, we would be sisters again, the ghosts of our shared past filling the space between us. But these moments became vanishingly rare. When I was 16, Mom remarried, and we moved to a larger house in the historic Ardsley Park neighborhood. The move meant a new school for my junior year. The thought of starting over was daunting, but I was determined. I found my footing in the textile arts program, a vibrant, welcoming community of weavers and dreamers. Chloe, now a senior, seemed lost. Her old friends were in our former district, and she made little effort to make new ones. I'd see her alone at lunch, her face illuminated by the blue light of her phone, a fortress of indifference built around her. My heart ached for her. One day, I invited her to sit with my new friends. "This is my sister Chloe," I said, my voice bright with a hope I couldn't quell. She endured one lunch, her silence a heavy weight at our table, her eyes scanning my friends with a cool, assessing gaze. She never came again. Instead, she began a quiet campaign, telling people I was a social climber, that my friendliness was an act. The first clear, cold sign of the danger simmering beneath her resentment came during my application for a prestigious summer arts program. A major component was a portfolio piece, and I had spent months on a large, intricately woven wall hanging, using silk I had dyed myself with indigo and cochineal. It was the most ambitious piece I had ever created. The night before the portfolio was due, I laid it out carefully on the floor of my room to photograph it. The next morning, I awoke to a strange, acrid smell. A bottle of bleach had been overturned on the corner of my piece, its chemical teeth eating away the delicate color and fibers, leaving a scarred, pale wound in the heart of my design. Chloe, when confronted, was a picture of wide-eyed innocence. She claimed she'd tripped while cleaning, that it was a terrible accident. Mom, desperate to believe her, accepted the story. "It's a shame, Lena, but these things happen. You're talented, you can make another." I knew it wasn't an accident. I saw the faint, triumphant smirk she tried to hide. I said nothing. I submitted my portfolio with the damaged piece, including a note about the unfortunate studio accident. I didn't get into the program. And I watched my sister, who hadn't even applied, breathe a sigh of relief. Even then, I couldn't comprehend the depths of her jealousy, the lengths to which it would one day take her. Senior year, the acceptance letters arrived. Chloe was accepted into a state university a few hours away. I received a significant scholarship to the Oglethorpe Institute of Art and Design, right here in Savannah, one of the top art schools in the country. Mom saw it as a wonderful opportunity. "You'll be close to home," she'd said, willfully blind to the storm clouds gathering in Chloe's eyes. Dad, in one of our quiet weekend talks, was more perceptive. "Are you sure about this, Lena Bean? Staying here? Chloe seems to see your success as a personal affront." I should have listened. But Oglethorpe was my dream, and I refused to let my sister's shadows dictate the course of my life. I still clung to a sliver of hope that with distance, with her own life at a new school, she might heal. "It'll be fine, Dad," I'd assured him. "We'll be in different cities. It's a fresh start for both of us." The summer was a tense, silent ceasefire. Chloe went off to college in the fall, and for a few blissful months, I felt like I could finally breathe. My first year at Oglethorpe was a renaissance. I fell in love with weaving on a grand scale, the rhythmic dance of the loom a form of meditation. My roommate, Olivia, was a kind-hearted sculptor who understood the obsessive nature of artists. I found my tribe in the Fiber Arts Building, a community bound by the shared language of thread and dye. My work caught the eye of Professor Alastair Finch, the department head, a brilliant but demanding mentor who pushed me to experiment and grow. I was happy. It took until the following year when Chloe, unhappy at her own school, transferred to Oglethorpe for the shadows to return. She enrolled in the graphic design program and made it clear we were to lead separate lives. "Don't come looking for me," she'd said on her first day back in Savannah. "I need to have my own experience here." I respected her wishes, but the campus wasn't that big. I would see her, and I could feel her watching me. Soon, the whispers started. A classmate in my dye theory class asked me, "Is it true you got Professor Finch to give you priority loom access by flirting with him?" The accusation was ludicrous, but it spread. I knew it was Chloe's work. Olivia overheard her in the student cafe, talking to a group of friends about her poor, ambitious sister who will do anything for an advantage. It was around this time that Chloe started dating Mark Jennings. He was a senior in the architecture program, broad-shouldered and intense, with a reputation for a short fuse. The first time I met him, he gave me a look that was openly hostile. "So you're the famous little sister," he'd said, his arm draped possessively around Chloe's shoulders. "Chloe says you're used to getting your own way." His presence felt like a storm front, a tangible threat. I saw the way he'd grip Chloe's arm when another guy so much as glanced at her, the way he'd check her phone. When I tried to gently voice my concern, Chloe's reaction was explosive. "You're just jealous," she'd spat. "Mark is a real man. He looks out for me. He protects me from people who try to undermine me. People like you." The sabotage started again, small at first. A batch of expensive dye for a project mysteriously contaminated. A crucial textbook vanishing from my studio locker. Then came the announcement of the Willow Weave Fellowship, a prestigious award given to one junior that included a summer residency and a significant grant. Professor Finch encouraged me to apply. I poured my heart into my proposal and portfolio. The day the recipients were announced, I saw my name on the list. I was overjoyed, a feeling that lasted until I saw Chloe's face across the quad, her expression a mask of pure, unadulterated fury. The confrontation happened a few days later. She cornered me outside the Fiber Arts building. "Congratulations," she said, her voice dripping with venom. "You got it. The one thing I wanted. You always have to win, don't you?" "Chloe, I didn't even know you applied," I said, which was the truth. "Liar. You knew. You did this to humiliate me." Mark appeared at her side, a silent, menacing shadow. "Is she bothering you, babe?" he asked Chloe, but his cold eyes were locked on me. "It's fine," I said, trying to walk away. He stepped into my path. "Chloe says you've been making her life hell. Maybe you should be more careful." A campus security officer happened to be walking by, and the moment he saw us, Mark's posture changed. He stepped back, raising his hands in a gesture of peace. "Just a family disagreement," he said smoothly. The officer looked at me, a question in his eyes. I should have said something. I should have told him about the threat. But I was frozen by the complicated loyalty of sisterhood. "We're fine," I said, and fled. That night, I returned to my studio to find my loom, the one I had spent the semester working on, a ruin. The warp threads, hundreds of them, meticulously strung, had been slashed with a knife, the half-finished tapestry hanging in tatters. On the bench lay a single, chilling note: "This is your last warning." I didn't withdraw my name from the fellowship. I borrowed a loom, worked around the clock, and created a new, smaller piece for the final submission. It wasn't as grand as my first, but it was imbued with a fierce, desperate resolve. I would not let her break me. The day of the attack began like any other. I spent the afternoon in the studio, preparing my final portfolio. Professor Finch stopped by. "Your resilience is remarkable, Lena," he said, looking at my new work. "Don't let anyone ever dim your light." His words were a small comfort. I stayed late, losing myself in the familiar, soothing rhythm of the work. By the time I packed up, it was after 10 p.m. The art building was hollow and silent. My usual path was blocked by construction, forcing me to take a shortcut through the back of the building, past the ceramics wing. To get to the exit, I had to pass the women's restroom. As I approached, the door swung open, and Mark was standing there. He blocked my way. "What are you doing in here?" I asked, my voice trembling. He smiled, a cold, predatory expression. "Chloe sent me. She says you didn't get the message. She says you need a more permanent lesson about staying in your own lane." He stepped toward me. "She said your hands and your face are your assets." She wants to make sure you can't use them for a while. Panic, cold, and absolute seized me. I tried to run, but he was too fast. He grabbed me, his grip like iron, and shoved me toward the tiled wall. My portfolio fell, my work scattering across the floor. "Please," I begged. "Mark, don't." "Chloe sends her regards," he whispered, and then he slammed my face into the corner of the heavy porcelain sink. I felt a sickening, shattering crunch as the bones in my cheek and around my eye gave way. The world exploded in a supernova of white-hot pain, then went dark on one side. Before I could even scream, he hit me again. I fell, and my last conscious thought was the metallic taste of blood and the sound of his footsteps walking away, leaving me in the echoing silence. I woke up in a world of muted sound and antiseptic smells. A kind nurse's face swam into view. "You're at Memorial Hospital, honey. You've had surgery." My face was a cage of bandages and swelling, my jaw wired shut. The doctor, a woman with compassionate eyes, explained the extent of the damage. Multiple orbital and zygomatic fractures, a broken nose, a fractured jaw, a detached retina. A clinical inventory of my shattering. The police came. I wrote my answers on a notepad, my hand shaking. I wrote Mark's name. I wrote, "Chloe sent him." My dad was a rock. He never left my side, his quiet, steady presence a lifeline in the chaotic sea of pain and fear. My mother came once, her face a mask of horrified denial. "There must be a mistake," she kept saying. Chloe would never. Dad asked her to leave. The weeks that followed were a blur of pain, medication, and the slow, arduous process of recovery. Dad brought me to his home, where he cared for me with a tenderness that broke my heart. The PTSD came later, in the form of night terrors and flashbacks that would leave me shaking and breathless. My therapist, Dr. Sharma, helped me understand that I was grieving not just my face and my safety, but the sister I had lost long ago. The police investigation uncovered the text messages. "She's in the studio late," Chloe had written to Mark. "Take care of it. Make sure her face and hands are a mess. Make it look like a mugging." Faced with the evidence, Mark confessed, implicating Chloe completely. Chloe, through her lawyer, claimed he had gone too far, that she had only wanted him to scare me. They came to my father's house one afternoon, my mother and Chloe, their faces pale and strained. "You have to tell them it was a misunderstanding, Lena," my mother began. "This will ruin her life." Chloe stood behind her, tears in her eyes. "I never meant for him to hurt you so badly, Lena. I was just so angry." I looked at her, at the sister who had been my son, and saw only the vast, empty darkness of her envy. "You wanted me broken," I whispered, the words aching in my newly unwired jaw. "So that your light could finally seem bright. You will not ask me to protect you from the consequences of that." I did not attend the university disciplinary hearing, but submitted written testimony, along with the evidence. Both were permanently expelled. Mark, in a plea deal, received a 5-year sentence for aggravated battery. Chloe, faced with charges of conspiracy and solicitation, pleaded no contest. She was sentenced to 2 years in prison. I stood in the courtroom on the day of her sentencing and read my victim impact statement. I spoke not of anger, but of loss. "The person who set this violence in motion was not a stranger," I said, my voice clear and strong. "She was my sister. And that is a wound for which there is no surgery, no reconstruction." A year later, I transferred to a college in North Carolina, needing the distance, the new landscape. For a long time, I couldn't touch a loom. The thought of weaving, of creating, was inextricably linked to the trauma. Dr. Sharma suggested I try to reclaim it. "What if you wove your scars, Lena?" she asked. "What if you told your story in the one language that is truly yours?" And so, my senior thesis was born. It was a series of large-scale weavings, each one representing a stage of my journey. The first was chaotic, with slashed threads and jarring colors, called Shattered. The next incorporated metallic threads, representing the titanium plates in my face, titled Reconstructed. The final piece was serene, woven in soft, healing colors, with a pattern that suggested a scar, not as a flaw, but as a place where the fabric had been joined together and made stronger. I called it Woven. My exhibition, Woven Scars, opened to quiet acclaim. Dad and my stepmother were there, their faces filled with a pride that brought tears to my eyes. Olivia drove down from Savannah to be there. As I stood by my work, a young woman approached me, her own face bearing the faint trace of a scar on her cheek. "Thank you," she said, her voice thick with emotion. "You've given a voice to something I thought I had to hide forever." In that moment, I understood the purpose of my pain. 6 months after Chloe was released from prison, a letter arrived. Her handwriting was unfamiliar, changed. I opened it with trembling hands. "Lena," it began. "I don't write to ask for your forgiveness, as I know I have not earned it. I write only to say that I am finally getting the help I have needed for a very long time. The things I did to you were born of a sickness in my own soul, a jealousy so deep it poisoned everything. There is no excuse. I live every day with the knowledge of the harm I caused. I hope, one day, you find a life of peace and light. You always deserved it." I folded the letter and placed it in a small, wooden box. I didn't know if I would ever reply. Forgiveness felt like a distant, foreign shore. But for the first time, I felt a flicker of something other than pain when I thought of her, a sad, remote pity. Today, my life is quiet, and it is my own. I have a small studio in a town nestled in the Blue Ridge Mountains. I teach weaving to at-risk youth, helping them find their own stories in the threads. My face is not the face I was born with, but it is the face of a survivor. The scars, once a source of shame, are now a part of my landscape, a testament to my resilience. They are a reminder that the most beautiful textiles are often those that have been torn and mended, their strength and character found not in their initial perfection, but in the loving, patient work of being made whole again.